Hi, Bradley. Welcome to the latest edition of Where is Jolo? We're doing something special this week. We're going to run this also as a podcast on Brazen Presents, our channel on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And that's because there are a lot of people who probably haven't been following this as closely as some of the people on YouTube, and we want to take them deep inside our search for Jolo, Low Tech Joe. He is one of the world's most wanted financial criminals, if not the most wanted. He's been on the run for many years, since 2015. This is in relation to the billion dollar whale scandal. Bradley and I wrote a book about it, Billion Dollar Whale, which came out in 2018. This was the 1MDB fund, was a fund set up in Malaysia by the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, who's now in jail over this huge scandal. Up to $8 billion was stolen. And Jolo was the mastermind of the whole thing. The money went into Hollywood films. It went into real estate in the US. Jolo ended up dating Miranda Kerr, the Australian supermodel, became friends with Leonardo DiCaprio, made The Wolf of Wall Street with the stolen money. And he's been on the run now for many years. And the reason for the YouTube channel series and now this podcast was just to keep people up to date with why somebody who is so wanted. He's wanted in the US where he's indicted. He's wanted in Singapore and in Malaysia where he's indicted. How are they able to stay free? And that's what we've been trying to answer. And we're going to recap you on everything we've learned through our YouTube series. And we've got also some tantalizing new evidence of where he is that involves Taiwan. But Bradley, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about why he is protected in China?
Yeah, this is really a project about impunity. This is somebody who stole billions of dollars, is on the run, and nobody seems to be really trying to get him. And so that's why we wanted to make this show. It all comes down to back in 2015, Jolo was on the run. The FBI was investigating, and he needed a new patron. He needed new friends. And what he did was he started to reach out to people in China and the intelligence world using his contacts. He really didn't have strong contacts. He started to develop them there. And he came up with this kind of brilliant plan. We can bail out the Prime Minister of Malaysia, the same guy that I put in trouble by stealing all this money. And in exchange, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, will essentially mortgage the country's sovereignty. They'll do whatever we want them to do as China. And so this was a very tantalizing offer. And not only that, but China will make a lot of money in the process because Malaysia will agree to overpay for assets. We'll take a little bit of that to bail out Najib, but the rest of it is profit for China and Chinese companies.
Let's just recap here. So in 2015, we and others, we worked for the Wall Street Journal at the time, and others, we broke news about Jolo stealing, billions of dollars from this fund in Malaysia. And as we said, it went into all these uses. And then later, a couple of years later, he's indicted in various jurisdictions. And Najib, who allowed this fraud to happen, he set up the fund. He gave Jolo the power, basically the power of a minister, and Jolo stole all the money from the fund. Najib was using it for political reasons. His wife was using it for jewelry. Najib's still prime minister, even though Jolo has been indicted. Najib can't be indicted at that time. We're talking about 5 or 6 years ago. So Jolo goes to China on Najib's orders, get out of Malaysia, it's too hot here. And he embeds himself into the political class in China, the Communist Party leaders. He is basically bribing a number of Communist Party leaders, some of whom have actually been found guilty of bribery since in recent months. And one of them is, I think, set to be executed. And he comes to them with a proposition, which is, look, we can do these dirty infrastructure deals in Malaysia, where Najib is still prime minister, and you guys can all make a lot of money. We can make more money. We can fill some of the holes that we created by stealing money in the first place from 1MDB. And those are the famous Belt and Road infrastructure initiatives. And so Jolo knew so much about corruption in China, and that's what we've been explaining in these episodes. That is why, Bradley, that he's able to stay there and stay protected, right?
Yeah, he started off as this amazing kind of asset for the intelligence sector and the business and the strategic point of view of China. And then he ended up being a liability. Now, if they let him go, they're afraid that he'll just start talking about how things really work in China. How does the Belt and Road Initiative really work on the inside, and what are all the details of that? And that's explosive material, because the Belt and Road Initiative is one of the biggest investors in developing countries around the world. And if those countries knew that there was this hidden dimension to these deals, not just rumored, but spoken of, on the record or in detail, they would be loath to take those deals because they would be afraid of losing their own sovereignty, just like Malaysia almost did. Malaysia was on the edge of becoming a puppet state of China because of the 1MDB scandal. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, they were going to build a railroad called the East Coast Rail Project. It was going to go down the east coast of Malaysia and across near the capital, Kuala Lumpur, and it was padded by tens of millions of US dollars so that they could steal the money. And we know this because we got hold of minutes of meetings in China between Jolo and senior Communist Party officials that detail the corruption, and they're very brazen about it. They're out in the open about it, and so that's one reason he hasn't been brought to face justice in Malaysia, Singapore, or the US, because China's holding on to him. The other reason is that nobody in Malaysia is really asking for him to come back, Bradley. And now that's because so many people in Malaysia, in the former Prime Minister Najib's party, were involved with Jolo, right? Najib, of course, lost power in elections in 2018 and now is in jail serving a 12-year sentence for his involvement with Jolo. But there's been a change of guard in the power in government in Malaysia, and that could be bad for Jolo, I suppose.
Yeah, and also, well, I think there is a chance now that under new government that there could be a change of tone, because there is still this beating impulse towards justice in this case. There's a lot of money that's still gone. This money hasn't been recovered. Only a billion, or maybe 20% or less of the money that was stolen was recovered, and then that's another big part of our investigation. We know that Jho Low's in China through our reporting, and but some people wondered, who are your sources? Who are you talking to? How do you know? So we started this campaign, and we started to get messages in from people. We even got a picture of Jho at Disneyland, sitting and having dinner, just as if it's no big thing at all.
Disneyland
in Shanghai. And we got another series of photos of Jolo kind of wandering around a shopping mall in Macau, again, without any issue. And in the background were two people identified to us as his Chinese handlers, people who are both protecting him, but also protecting China, because they don't want him, having meetings that are not disclosed, or even running away himself. And then on top of that, we started looking for companies. China is actually quite transparent about corporate records. We have an amazing Chinese researcher who will go unnamed, but she's been helping us look, and we found some amazing details about a company in Shanghai that seems full of cash, with a BVI owner that is directly connected to Jolo, has an office in the Shanghai World Financial Center, one of the most iconic buildings in Shanghai, overlooking the Bund. Not only is he free, not only did he try to orchestrate these Chinese deals, he also tried to influence the United States government in a almost the most brazen way possible. He tried to find a variety of ways to get to Donald Trump when he was the president, to get him to drop this case, because in a way, the biggest thorn in the side of Jolo from the beginning was the U.S. Department of Justice. Say what you will about America and about American foreign policy, but the Department of Justice is, in my opinion, pretty much incorruptible. You can't just get them to drop a case. They also are extremely motivated by principles to some extent. This whole kleptocracy initiative is a big hassle for the U.S. government, but they decided to create it because things like the 1MDB scandal are poisoning the view of the world about capitalism, this American form of life. And maybe that form of life is not perfect, but there's this sense that all this stolen money, and we're seeing it with crypto now. Same thing, people's trust and faith is falling in the systems. And so that's why the Department of Justice acts and puts people in prison so that it doesn't keep going like that.
Well, Jolo had a fantastic meeting. One of my favorite things he ever did was he held a meeting in Shenzhen in China with Elliot Broidy, who was a businessman who was close to Trump. Pras Michel, the former rapper from the Fugees, known for his single ghetto superstar. And a few other people in Shenzhen, China, in I think 2017. And the whole goal of that meeting was to try to get Elliot Broidy to then go back to the White House and get Trump or somebody in the Trump administration to get the DOJ to drop the charges against Jho Low. And everyone was in that for a lot of money, and it didn't work. Right? They did end up trying to bribe someone in the Department of Justice, a medium level guy that perhaps Michelle happened to know. And none of it worked. So Jolo wasn't able to affect U.S. justice. There's still an open indictment for him there. He wasn't able to affect Malaysian justice either, because his patron Najib Razak, the prime minister, who oversaw all this corruption, or probably didn't know how much Jolo was stealing, but was enjoying the money that he got for his political machine, and also that his wife Rosma Mansour got for all her crazy amounts of jewelry she bought. Don't forget, she's the woman who, when they raided her apartments after all this came out, had almost $250 million of loose items in her house, handbags and Birkin bags and watches and this kind of thing. She's been found guilty and is out awaiting appeal. So Jolo really is the last piece of the puzzle here. Najib lost power, as I said, in jail, and now Anwar Ibrahim is prime minister. Has just become Malaysia's new prime minister. And we believe, Bradley, don't we, that Anwar becoming prime minister spells perhaps a slightly bigger chance that Malaysia will start to actively ask Chinese authorities for Jolo to return home?
Yes. What we're hearing from our sources is that this is now on the table again. The case of Jho Low is on the table again. It's not just going to be something that's swept under the carpet. But there's obviously big obstacles. How does Malaysia handle this delicate negotiation with China, the behemoth of the region, and ultimately Malaysian strategic concerns trump justice probably in this case most of the time. When the debate is had, so it will be a really interesting set of events coming up, and I think China has a lot to gain because they could sort of restore trust. And Malaysia has a lot to gain because they could kind of close the door on this case and maybe recover more of the money. I mean, we're talking about many billions of dollars still missing, still being spent in various ways, which actually leads me to our new finding. This company in Taiwan called Mingxi Investment Company Limited. And it's really just another example of this unbelievable ability of Jho Low to still be in business around the world in countries like Taiwan using his own name. He formed this company in November 2017. We're talking about well after the 1MDB scandal broke, well after the point where you could search for Jho Low's name and see lots of alarming details. And the other name associated is his wife. So they're both affiliated with a company that's a new company for us that we've come across called Bright Vision Holdings Limited. And there's some evidence that this might be a company based in Samoa, which is a kind of off the beaten track offshore jurisdiction. In 2019, his wife was removed as a director, but this is a company that we're extremely interested in. We want to know more. It says it has a 7 million paid up capital. We don't know the currency for sure on that. It could be Taiwan dollars or yuan. But it's just another example. And we're going to share some details of this online for people to kind of take a look. We're finding new companies all the time that are related to Jho Low. And these are just the ones with his name on it. I mean, that's the crazy thing. What's out there that we don't actually know about is the real search. And luckily for us, there's also a search going on. There's a liquidator that ultimately reports to the Malaysian government that's also pursuing these through civil lawsuits. We're extremely hopeful that these lawsuits are going to yield in discovery all kinds of documents about banking relationships. And essentially, one of the biggest mysteries for us is what happened to the money. We know what happened to the money up until a certain point, and then the story ends. The U.S. government's story of where the money went ends at that point. We know that a lot of it ended up in China, but we don't know exactly how, and we don't know where it is in China, and what's it being used for. Yeah. Is it still finding its way into U.S. politics through some, roundabout way? That's really the big question, because that's what Jho Low's famous for, and that's what he's been up to since the beginning. So there's no reason to think that he's just cooling his heels right now. He's using that money in a variety of ways, and we want to know exactly what happened.
Yes, and of course, we're going to keep our eyes open and our ears open. And for all of you who are listening or watching on YouTube, please send us any tips you have about where Jolo is. It's an extremely important. It sounds like it's an old story that we've been banging on about for many, many months, but it's an important story because billions of dollars are still missing. This is money that the Malaysians are owed. We're hoping that under the new Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, it's going to become more of a political issue. There will be more diplomatic efforts to get Jolo sent back from China. And in the meantime, we'll keep looking. And we've actually produced a T-shirt, haven't we, Bradley? Can you tell me what the T-shirt says on it and where people can buy it?
Yes, we were inspired by the old video game, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So we've created a pixelated version of Jolo, and basically the T-shirt says "Where is Jolo?" And I think the more people that wear this shirt, the more likely that this becomes something that seeps into the consciousness of people, especially in Malaysia. So we're hopeful people enjoy this as well, and take a look online. You can find all of our merch at shop.projectbrazen.com. And we'll put it up on Twitter as well.
So go on shop.projectbrazen.com and buy the Where is Jolo T-shirt. Wear it proudly. We're not Jolos ourselves. All the money from the proceeds of the shirt sale will go back into whale hunting, and we'll use it to further our search for Jolo. So that's it for this episode, and stay tuned for more.